Hello, my name is Keila Cone-Uemura, and I am a bookseller at SKYLIT Books. And today I am so excited to welcome to the show Marie Lu. Marie is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 15 novels, including Legend, The Young Elites, Warcross, Sky Hunter, and Stars and Smoke. She graduated from the University of Southern California and initially jumped into the video game industry, working for Disney Interactive Studios as an artist. Now a full-time writer, she spends her spare time reading, drawing, playing games, and getting stuck in traffic. She lives in Los Angeles with her family. And now a little bit about Red City, the book we'll be discussing today. The Godfather meets the magicians in the sweeping adult debut. Perfect for fans of V.E. Schwab, Red City is a dark and deadly contemporary fantasy of magical warfare, star-crossed ambition, and the pursuit of perfection at any cost, set in a glittering alternate Los Angeles. Welcome, Marie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Keila, for having me. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to talk to you, too. I would love to first start generally talking about and hearing about your experience getting into writing, and then transition into talking more specifically about Red City, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
I knew I loved writing since I was very, very little. It took me a sec to figure out that this was a profession that you could do. But, when I first moved to the US with my parents, it was the year 1989, I was 5, and we settled in New Orleans. And, I didn't know any English, so I technically started writing because my mom would give me this assignment to go to kindergarten every day and write down 5 English words I didn't know. And I had to put them into sentences and paragraphs and stuff. So once I figured out enough of the language to know what to do with it, I realized I just kind of enjoyed that process of writing. So I started stapling together little books for myself, and I still have all these little tiny books I wrote with I would write by Marie, on them and pretend that they were real books. I didn't know at the time that real people wrote books. I don't know where I thought books came from. I just went to the library and they were there magically, and they had names on them. I don't think I made the connection that real people. Those were real people that wrote these books. And I didn't make that connection until I was 13. And I was reading an article in the paper about an author talking about their book that was coming out. And that was the moment when I was like, oh my God, real people write books. This is a job that people have. And from that point on, I was like, oh, this is what I would love to do as an adult. And started just writing very bad fantasy novels and sending them to agents and getting rejection letters by the hundreds. So it took a good decade after that for me to actually get published, but that was how I started. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Did you, so many of your stories are these really sweeping fantasy stories. Did you were you always drawn to that style of storytelling?
I was, yeah. I think when I was really little, I loved a lot of, contemporary fiction. I loved Misty of Chincoteague. I loved all the, Babysitter's Club's books and Sweet Valley and all of that. Back when we didn't have as much YA and middle grade as we do now. But I remember very clearly my entry point into fantasy, and it was the Brian Jakes Redwall series. I loved those books. I was obsessed with them. I can remember the day I was at school walking past the library and seeing Madame Mayo by Brian Jakes displayed in the window, and just being drawn by that cover. It's a mouse warrior, and I was like, what is that? And I walked past it all week before I finally went in. I checked it out and just blew through it, and I was obsessed. That was my entry point, and got me into Tolkien and everything that came after that. So yeah, I've always loved speculative fiction. I love the magic. I love the sci-fi. I love it all.
Yeah, the possibility that it contains too. And then I know that after college, you worked in video game design as an artist. I would love to hear about that. And I would also love to hear about how that affected your writing process and your like style of approaching a story?
Yeah, absolutely. And that period of my life influenced my trajectory as a writer hugely. In college, I was a political science and biology major because I thought I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like those were two of my four options at the time, and were, kind of like stable things to go into. And I loved my classes, but I graduated, and I remember on the last day, or like maybe the last week of college, I was about to go to law school, and I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And I was just feeling very like down about myself. And I was walking around campus, and I saw this bulletin, and it was from the Walt Disney Company, and they were looking for 8 interns to join a think tank in their video game division. And all we were going to do for 6 months was to come up with video game ideas. Like that was the job. And then you were going to prototype it out. And then if they liked it, they would make the game. And I remember I was a huge gamer as a kid too, in addition to reading and writing. And at the time I was like, this sounds like the coolest job I've ever heard of in my life. And it was like a moment of serendipity. So I like ran back to my dorm and I applied for the thing and got into the internship and just took this huge pivot in life. And I remember being on the phone with my parents and be like, I'm gonna defer law school and I'm gonna go work in video games for 6 months if that's okay. And my parents were like, yeah, okay. And I'm sure in their head, they were just like, oh my God, this is going to go so badly. But it turned out to be the best experience of my like working life. I was paired with 7 other interns, and it was my first experience being around creative professionals in a creative space. And, at the time I was getting rejected for my manuscripts, and had gotten to the point where I had gotten, I think, 3 or 4 manuscripts rejected. And I was I was in that space of like, I was like, maybe this is not in the cards for me. And I had this weird notion that, maybe I needed to grow up. Like this wasn't a thing that adults were supposed to do, trying to get their fantasy novels published. And I was just I had this like kind of misguided like thought in my head. And then I worked at, in the game industry, and suddenly it was okay to be a huge fan or a nerd. And, all we did was talk about games and story and look at cool art and make cool art. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, like this adults do this. Like this is, the creative fields are real. Like it never occurred to me that you could do this stuff, and make art and make it a profession. And it was magical to me. I met my husband there. Like he was one of my fellow interns. Yeah. So it changed my life in multiple ways.
Oh my gosh. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. It was the best meet cute. But I think I credit working in the video game world with helping me get my inspiration for writing back. And as I worked in video games for about 5 years, and then sold my first book. So then I had to step away from it. But I credit the video game world very much with helping me get to that point.
There are so many things in what you just said that I am interested in. One of them being the needing to see something to know that it's like a possibility as a life path. I think that is so overlooked. And I'm so happy that you were able to get that in such a clear way and to have that possibility presented to you. Also, this now is explaining to me why your worlds are so lush, because I feel like the world building of video games requires so much detail and forethought. And one thing that I loved and clung on to immediately in your writing was the imagery. And there's this immediacy that you have in your characters and also just in the world that you've created. It's so lush and vibrant and like visceral.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. It was a thrill to read, like truly a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. So this might be a good transition point then, because I would love to hear about when the idea for Red City first started to percolate. I know that in your acknowledgments, you said thank you to my friends for listening for years to me complain about this. So it sounds like it's been a years long process.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the earliest document I have on my computer for Red City was in 2019. So it was in the works for like in the before times, before the pandemic, which is how I kind of see the world, the timeline these days. I think the general idea for this story, which is, two young people kind of meeting each other in difficult circumstances and like coming through life together, was in my head from when I was very young, probably. There's, like the book opens with this scene of Sam, one of the protagonists, sitting in this broom closet of a restaurant, like waiting for her mother's waitressing shifts to end. And that was part of my childhood. That was my mom's first job when we arrived in the States, and she was a waitress, and I would sit in the closet and wait for her while she was, finishing up work. I mean, it was a nice closet. I say this, it sounds like, something terrible. There was like a couch and a TV in there. It wasn't like the worst place in the world. It was like a cute little, broom closet. But so I guess that was like the technical origin point for the story. But for the longest time, I knew I wanted to write this story about ambition and power and what we're willing to sacrifice in the pursuit of perfection and self-worth and all of that. And I didn't know how to make it all coalesce. I had Sam, and I had this general idea that there were these like mafias, these powerful syndicates that were ruling over this kind of alternate version of our world. I didn't have a magic system in place. I didn't know how that would work. I didn't have like a good magical system to be a symbol for all of these themes that I wanted to tackle. That didn't happen until a few years back. I was very lucky to be able to take a summer course at Oxford University in the UK, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. The course itself was great. It was an astronomy course, but the perk of being a summer student is that you get like a student pass, which allows you to go into the Bodleian libraries and the Radcliffe camera and poke around in there because it's not open to tourists. And it was like a kid in a candy store, and I was just like unleashed into the Bodleian, just kind of running through the halls like, oh my God, I'm a student here. And I remember just pulling all these books off the shelves, these kind of old, leather bound storied books, and sitting in the middle of the Radcliffe camera and just looking at their beautiful dome and just being this very kind of mystical, magical space. And one of the books that I pulled was a history of alchemy. And I would say that's probably the starting point for when the magic system fell into place. And as I was reading that book, in the Radcliffe camera, I had a moment where I was like, this is what's missing in the story.
Wow.
Alchemy is the magic system that I need. Alchemy is the symbol for the transformation of a person and, our desire for something more desirable, this eternal need to pursue perfection. Like alchemy is perfect for that idea. So from there, I think I knew that was the piece that needed to fall into place because just questions just flooded my head. Like, how would alchemy work in the modern society, and who gets to have that power, and what do those people do with that power? They probably use it to make money. How do they make money using alchemy? How does this fit into capitalism, as a construct of our society? How do Sam and Art? So all these questions are coming in. Like, how do you educate yourself in alchemy? How do they teach it? And the rest of the book kind of fell into place from there. But it was a long journey. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect too, because I was going to ask why specifically alchemy, or what about this idea of transformation drew you in, and that does feel like the thing that needed to fall into place.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about your choice to set it in this like alternate version of Los Angeles versus creating a whole new fictional city. I loved that it was in Los Angeles, and I'm wondering, did you know that from the beginning, or what was the process there?
Yeah, that's a great question. For a while, I did play around with, what if this was a completely secondary world? What if this is completely fantasy? And it wasn't quite clicking into place. And I think part of the reason is that a lot of the themes that I wanted to tackle were themes of my thoughts about our world. And in a way, the book was my way of grieving our world, things that so many things going wrong right now. But I wanted it to feel both grounded in something that felt familiar to everyone, but also had this very strange kind of magical undercurrent to it. And LA as a city has always fascinated me. I live in LA, so I love my hometown. I'm always writing about it. And it's a strange place to be. Like it feels like there is dark magic in the alleys, right? Like I feel this when I'm, near your bookstore. Like there's, it's the city just constantly undergoing transformations. There are so many extremes in the city. There's like just indescribable wealth and abject poverty, and they're right next to each other. And the city can be so grungy, and there's like these alleyways that just look, so dangerous, but you're also like, there is something in the undercurrent of this city, and it always has felt magical to me. And I think it was Stan Lee who said that Gotham was New York City at night. So I kind of feel like Angel City is LA at night. So
I love that.
It is, it's glamorous, it's grungy, it's dangerous, it's very seductive. There's a lot of problems, but you can't really look away. And I really wanted to capture all of my thoughts of our city, in this book with the broader themes of power and ambition and all of that. And I think all of that fits really well into LA. And LA is such a home of people from all walks of life who come here, to pursue something greater, and they come here with these like big dreams and all of this ambition, and it's just so emblematic of what LA is that it just felt right to set the story here.
Oh, I agree. That gave me chills listening to you say that, and that was another element that I was immediately so excited about, was the centering of these two Asian immigrant stories. It was really refreshing to see that at the center of a sci-fi book. I think that's so powerful. And then the ways that opens up and heightens the stakes that are already present here, opens up different elements of class, this myth of meritocracy that they're both pushing up against. I would love to hear you talk more about that choice.
Yes, I love that you asked that. And hopping on what we just talked about, LA is a city of immigrants. Like we're pretty much all here from somewhere else. And I think that this story, the only way to tell this story properly was to have it be an immigrant story, because the whole idea of ambition and the pursuit of perfection is basically the American dream. Like the entire story is basically talking about the American dream and what it costs, to pursue that. And so Sam and Ari were always going to be Asian immigrants, and I very much wanted them to show two different kinds of immigrant experiences. Sam is a baby when she comes to Angel City, and so she has no connection with her motherland aside from her own mother and what story she has. So all she's ever known is Angel City. Whereas Ari, is taken from his family when he's a little bit older. I think I can't actually remember how old he is. I think he's like 12 maybe. And, he ends up here. So he has an attachment he's from India, and to his family and his culture, and all of that is taken from him. And he has something to lose. And I wanted to show kind of the different ways that they experienced being uprooted like that from their homelands, and what that experience is like. I also wanted to show it in the way that they approach alchemy and how it influences their different personalities. Because Sam is a Chinese American. She goes through life very unseen. Like that is kind of her strength and weakness in a way. She is the girl that you kind of forget about the party, and always is on like the edge of a friendship circle, and people kind of forget what she says or ignore her or don't notice when she leaves, and all of that. Whereas Ari is very, very seen. Like, you cannot miss him. You know, he goes down the hallway, everybody sees him. People either love him or they hate him or they bully him. You know, he's always there. And that was very much how I think I wanted to show how different groups of marginalized Asians and marginalized people are treated and seen in the country, because, you know, Sam is Chinese American, but she is also light skinned. You know, she is invisible to people until they don't want her to be. Whereas Ari, you know, is darker skinned and he's very visible and he cannot hide in his invisibility. So especially when they're younger, Ari is very jealous of the fact that Sam can just kind of walk through life, you know, and people don't bother her one way or the other, whereas he cannot go anywhere without people kind of noticing him. And whereas Sam is very jealous of Ari's ability to attract attention, because she just hungers to be, you know, acknowledged in some way. Like, she doesn't even care how you acknowledge her. She's just, I just want to know that I'm here, you know, like, can you see me? And so they have these they're very much foils of each other in that way. And all of that comes from, you know, who they are when they come to Angel City.
I also, the foil element is definitely one that was fascinating to me, because the invisibility coming with being perceived as a threat or not a threat until you are too visible. And then, those different types of loss for their home countries, a loss of something that you've never had the opportunity to know or live within versus one that you remember less and less. The qualities of those are so different. And now I do see the way it comes out in their alchemy. That's such a beautiful detail.
Thank you.
I would also love to get into the class element that's at play in this. I was really interested in the markers of wealth, and specifically the markers of entrenched wealth or old money, and sort of the facade of that, the very clear sacrifice that seems to be necessary for class mobility sometimes. I would just love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, I love that you asked about that, because that plays obviously a huge part in Red City, because the whole story is about Sam and Ari trying to rise out of their class. You know, they are born into poverty and are trying to get out of it. And that's the draw of America. You know, you come here to try, you're coming here for a better life. You're coming here for something more. And then I think the problem is this country knows that's why people are coming here, so that they can move up in class in a way that they maybe couldn't in their homeland, and they exploit it. And that feeling is exploited here, where, you know, they're like, the question is always, what are you willing to sacrifice for this thing that you want? How much do you want it? And to a certain extent, that is a good, you know, feeling to have, to want to hustle and want to, you know, work for something, but at what cost? It's always like at the cost of time with your family, your health, you know, time for yourself, for your children. All of that is stuff that has to go by the wayside. And we see that play out very much so in Sam's mother, who, you know, comes to this country. She's strong. She's ready to go. She's trying to find a better life for her daughter, but she is stuck working, and doesn't have time for her. And ultimately, this is Sam's downfall. This is the beginning of, you know, in an ironic way, it kind of destroys her. And I think and this goes back to another reason why I chose Angel City, you know, LA as kind of the setting for that. I think I'm always a little embarrassed telling this story. No. There was a party that I went to a few years back. This was when my kid, I have a 6-year-old. This was my kid was 2 or 3 or something. And he was going to our local preschool, and one of his friends invited him to a birthday party, and it was a party at the park. And I was like, oh, this will be, you know, it's a party at the park. But this was not a normal park. It was, we went through 3 different security gates to get into this park. It was a very exclusive enclave of Beverly Hills. Oh. And the park party was the fanciest thing I'd ever seen in my life. You know, it was, there were torches, and there were statues, and there were roller coasters. And I was just like,
what?
Wow. There was a candy wall. like it was catered, and then there was this kid area with kid food, and they had like chicken nuggets and all of that, and the chicken nuggets had gold flakes on them, and I was, which my 3-year-old wouldn't eat because there was stuff on it. So I was like,
yeah.
Okay. So I had this moment where I was like scraping gold off of these chicken nuggets so that my 3-year-old would eat it, and that was one of those out of body moments where I was like, I feel very weird. And I don't mean this as a commentary in any way on the actual birthday party, and the family. The family is very lovely, but something about that image kind of just stuck with me, because then we went home and we're driving past tents on the street, and I just felt very kind of bothered for the next few days, and I realized I wasn't bothered by any of the people or the party or any of that. It was just that the gap in this country is getting wider and wider, and people are not doing well, but somehow this is allowed to coexist side by side. And I wanted to capture that somehow in Red City, this feeling of like, is that the American dream? Is that reaching that kind of level of wealth? Is that the dream? Like, what exactly is it that we're trying to get to? Is it ever enough? When you get to a certain rung, do you always want more? Is that what powers, the society? And then who falls by the wayside, in that kind of system? So it was a lot of thoughts on like capitalism and class and all of that. And just trying to, and I have no good answers for any of it. It's just all one big kind of rumination on what moving in class does to a person. And, we'll see this in the story as characters kind of claw their way up and what they lose in exchange for switching class. And what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to be a human who is in a higher class, quote, quote, higher class than another? And why does that matter? And why do we allow it to happen? So
yeah,
I know that was kind of all over the place, but that's kind of what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. I mean, I think you did get at it. And it makes the whole opening of the book and Sam thinking about a young Sam, thinking about the world around her as enough and being so filled with awe at these seemingly mundane things that are enough for her. It makes that so much more poignant.
Yeah, I think that she has a moment where she like first enters this very beautiful, wealthy estate, owned by one of the mafia leaders, and she's just like blown away by what's possible. She's never seen, that level of wealth before. And I think to her, everything is beautiful, but I think she realizes very quickly that there's a lot of thorns that come with that.
I would love to go back a little bit to Connie and the mother-daughter relationship, because that was maybe my favorite part of the book. It's so compelling, the way that you have written this relationship. It's so impactful. I felt a lot of familiarity and recognition in some of the, especially moments of like slight misunderstanding. I would love to hear you talk more about that. It reminded me so much too of so many of my favorite authors and mother-daughter stories. So
thank you. Yeah, I think that relationship was probably the first thing that I had for this story at all. I always knew from the beginning that it was going to be a mother-daughter, a huge mother-daughter arc in this story. And it's a commentary not only on, what the sacrifices that people make to, find a better life, but also was a cathartic way for me to deal with my own fears and insecurities as a mother now. I don't think I could have written this story before I had my kid. He's 6 now, and I think that a lot of these mistakes that Connie makes as she's trying to be a good mother to Sam come out of a lot of like deep-rooted fears that I have of, how do I raise a good human? How do I be here for him? How do I, will I traumatize him in some way without realizing it? What do I want for him? And in life. And a lot of that went into building Connie's character. And I think if I had tried to write this relationship before I had him, I wouldn't have been able to write Connie as a point of view into the story, and would not have been able to make it as convincing as I wanted it to be. But I wanted it to be a story of two people, a mother and daughter who are trying their best. Connie is not a bad mother, but she makes a lot of mistakes with Sam. And Sam is a good daughter, but she also has trouble understanding where her mom is coming from. And the two of them just struggle with trying to reach each other. And I very much wanted to emphasize that kind of generational gap between them, and the ways that we can, misunderstand each other in our families, and the decisions that they make, and how that can impact generations, how generational trauma works, and, how things that happen to Connie now become things that affect Sam. And, on and on and on. So I think their relationship was the hardest thing that I had to write for this book. There were definitely chapters that I had trouble revisiting for Connie because, it hit kind of closer to home, where I was like, I see parent-child relationships in a very different way now than I used to. So yeah, it was a challenge.
Oh my gosh. And that does make sense. Not being able to write that until you yourself have lived that side of the relationship.
Yeah.
This was sort of a sidebar, but when you are writing something, either a character or a scene that feels very emotionally loaded, do you have specific ways of engaging and then disengaging with the material?
That's a great question. It kind of changes depending on the book and what the scene is. I remember when I was writing this was a while back, my YA series, The Young Elites, which is a dark fantasy series. And, it's essentially about this girl who becomes a supervillain, but it was from a first person point of view. And she had some very dark chapters. And I remember back then I had a dark playlist, like an evil playlist to get into the evil mindset. So I could write from her point of view convincingly. And then after a day of writing that, and I was just thoroughly just disgusted with myself, I would be like, I need to go dogpile with my dogs and feel something fuzzy. And that was a rough trilogy. And then after that I was like, never again. And then I wrote Red City, and I went through kind of the same emotional trauma. So usually, if I know I'm going to get started on a heavy scene that day, I will have to put myself in the right mindset. Like, I will read maybe a couple of dark chapters from my favorite dark book or whatever, and I'll put on my dark music, and then just kind of psych myself up for this moment. And then usually for those types of scenes, it'll just flood out of my head in, an hour or two. Very rough, but kind of in place. And then I'll take a long time to kind of edit it into shape. Yeah, I think my husband can always tell when I'm having one of those days, because I'm just like, sugar, give me sugar, give me something delicious. I need energy to get through this.
I need it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That feels very actor adjacent too, to sort of be getting your body into the mindset of the character. I've also heard that you draw your characters sometimes to get into their headspaces. Is that something that you still do?
It is something I still do. I do it a little bit less than I used to, just because I have less time than I used to. Oh. But when I get a chance, usually when I'm first starting out a story, I will try to sketch out my characters or some piece of the world, just to help me get into the mind space of the characters. I think I have trouble connecting to the characters without being able to visually see them on the page. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
This sort of comes back to what I was saying and thinking about earlier with your video game background, but so much of your writing is so visceral and image forward, and especially some of the scenes of violence are so gruesome and immediate.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your process is for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the violence in this one especially gets pretty gruesome, just because of the way you can use alchemy magic for it.
Yeah. Very innovative, though.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I was inspired by the Middle Ages. When I'm writing an actual action sequence, I will stop and outline for a little bit just so I have like the moving parts correct in my head. I'm usually a very kind of pantsy writer. I write by the seat of my pants. I just kind of go and, and here ensues chaos. But for action scenes, because I kind of need to know A, B, C, and D and what's going to happen next, I will kind of structure it out. And in this case, they were actually a lot of fun to write. I hate saying that, but structuring the magical fights was fun because I was playing with this version of alchemy where, anything can be transmuted into anything else as long as it's equal in weight or mass or size or whatever. So I had a lot of fun coming up with stuff like, if this alchemist picks up this glass of water and flings it, it becomes hydrochloric acid. Like they can turn it into that. If they, there's a moment in a bathroom where like the porcelain on the urinal gets transmuted into somebody's body, and so I don't want to give too many of these away, but
I remember that moment.
But I do too. That was quite a scene to write, but it was kind of like a twisty sort of fun to come up with those, and just thinking about like, okay, I'm going to put these characters into this specific space, like a bathroom, whatever. What can they use around them? And what can those things change into? And how can they use them against other people? And how would other people use them against, themselves? So yeah, they were both fun and slightly disturbing to write.
They were fun and disturbing to read too.
Oh,
and it changed the way I was moving through the world. Cause I was like, oh, like if I put my hand here, this could do this if I were in the Red City.
Right.
This is sort of a hard pivot, but in your acknowledgments, you also mentioned a book called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. And I started reading that book on your recommendation, and it is
really
beautiful. Yes.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Yes. It makes me, it's another like just perspective changing book. But I'm wondering what drew you specifically to trees for this novel? And then also, are there any elements of nature or books about nature that you are drawn to or have been drawn to?
That's such a lovely question. And I love that you're reading this book. It's so great. It's a book that I think about all the time now. It changed my way of seeing the world, I think. So that book was a recommendation for me from my good friends, Ransom Riggs and Tahira Mafi, who they have such good taste in books. And that was one of the books that Tahira, I remember, recommended to me. And she was like, you should check this one out. It's not a long read, but it's just very insightful. And at first I was like, trees, I don't know. Like, I love plants, but I was kind of like, this sounds like a technical manual. Whatever, fine. I've never read a book from Tahira that I didn't like. So I was like, all right, I'm going to read this. And then I started reading it, and it was so beautiful. It's a book about trees, but I promise it's so much more interesting than that. It's about how trees, there's these secret lives that living things have around us that we might not even be aware of, and how they go through metamorphosis and transformation in a way that really stuck with me. And I think that's why it ended up in this book about alchemy and transformation. There's a scene several chapters in which I think Angelino's probably, will relate to the most, in that there's wildfire season happening. And Sam talks about she's looking up at the sky filled with smoke and trying to imagine what this will transform into in 6 months' time. How do we go from, there's like a beautiful green spring, and then it flowers, and then it changes into yellow grass, and it bursts into flames, and we start all over again. And this idea of this cycle. And the book, The Hidden Life of Trees, is so good at showing that cycle, like the birth and the death and the fight for life in trees, and how they, like in forests, trees will communicate with each other through their roots. Like they will actually talk to each other. They will take care of each other. If they're like one of their comrades is sick, the trees around them actually try to help heal it. And trees are a community in that way. And they talk about how in urban jungles and cities, when you are uprooted and planted in a place that's not the forest, they go silent and they don't talk to each other and are isolated in this concrete jungle, but they still fight to survive, and they try to adapt to their circumstances. And I think what drew me, especially to trees for this, as a metaphor throughout this book, is that plants are handed circumstances that they cannot adjust. Like they cannot pick up and walk away. Like you're a seed, you were dropped onto this salty stone rock. That's where you're going to plant your roots, whether you like it or not. And, there's a moment in the book where R.A. talks about, trees growing on the side of cliffs, and they grow sideways because that's all they're given. And they're not like animals that can just move to a better spot. That's just what your circumstances are. And yet, aren't they wild and free? And aren't they living their lives? And it felt like such a good metaphor for transformation in Red City and what people are handed and what they do with their circumstances. And so, yeah, it's such a great book. I would recommend it to anybody.
It's a beautiful book. Yeah, and it does feel there's so many elements of it that I'm only partway through, but that are reminding me of Red City, the circumstantial, like, fight to survive, the element of things like not being what they seem or being as simple as they seem from the outside is, yeah. I'm so excited to finish it. Thank you for recommending it.
I'm so happy you're reading it.
Oh my God, it's so, so good. Okay, another sort of random question, but I was just so excited about it, is that I see themes of Shakespeare on multiple levels throughout this book. I saw Romeo and Juliet. I see some Lady Macbeth. Like were you thinking about Shakespeare while writing this?
A little bit, yeah. I think, and Shakespeare kind of is directly in the book in a way, and I won't spoil things, but I think there's also something to the notion of Shakespeare being this incredible, I mean, not just storyteller, but like an illusionist, because, he's writing for it to be seen and plays tricks with people that way. And I liked that element of incorporating that into bits and pieces of this story. I'm trying to talk about it without spoiling anything, but
I know we can cut this if it is.
no worries. But there's very, very definite, parallels to Romeo and Juliet throughout the story for very obvious reasons with Sam and Ari. But I think I wanted to highlight Shakespeare as somebody who was able to kind of change the world with his words in a similar way to how renowned alchemists in this world want to change their world through their alchemy. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And then, thinking about the lineages, both of Shakespeare and of these alchemists, because I was just like, it's stunning the way you are tapping into these like universal stories, and there's such human stories about betrayal and like seeking power and violence and love, but then there's also such a specificity, and I think it's so Shakespearean, but it's also so you and fresh.
Thank you.
So I'm always excited when I see Shakespeare references.
Yay, I'm so excited that you're excited.
Oh my gosh. Yes, amazing. I would love to transition a little bit into sort of more your writing process. And I know that this is first of all, congratulations on this adult debut novel. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
What has that transition been like?
Oh, that transition was rough. I don't know what I was expecting when I first started writing adult, but, in YA, everything is very immediate. Like in YA, what's so great about it is that you are writing from the point of view of characters that have spent a limited amount of time so far on the earth and thus do not have a lot of ways to reflect on something yet because everything is new. And so in YA, when you write a character, everything is happening right now. Like you're having these feelings right now, and something is going wrong right now, and everything feels very like immediate and present. And in that way, that goes into the typical pacing of young adult stories as well. And I was very used to that and telling a story from that kind of angle. And I was also a pretty young adult when I was first publishing young adult, so I think I also lacked the perspective to see it in any other way. And I still love YA for that, which is so good at distilling emotions and events down to like almost their purest, reaction. When you fall in love for the first time, when you are betrayed for the first time, and all of that. And then I switched to adult, and I remember turning in the first draft to my agent, and the first thing she said was, she's like, "This is still YA." And I couldn't understand what that meant at the time. I was like, what do you mean? Like, the characters are older. Why is it not? She was like, and so my agent was like, it's a perspective. It's a voice. It's more about the fact that in adult, you could have a character who is the same age and is experiencing the same event, but now you are going to analyze it with this additional lens of reflection, where you can see the ramification of a decision all the way through a character's life. Like, you can expand into their later years and see how that one thing from childhood had rippling consequences through their lives. You can expand your points of view to adults in other parts of the world who are also reacting to that same event and how it plays out in the wider society. There's a difference in perspective in accessing the same event and the same character that sets, I think, adult apart from YA. And it's really hard to explain. And I've realized that I'm still struggling with this. And it's hard to put a definition on, because there's a lot of adult books told from the point of view of children and young, teenagers, but there's like something that makes them adult. And I think I'm coming to understand that it is the perspective at which you approach that character. Adult just has like these additional layers where you can see the same event from all these different angles. And it's both challenging and rewarding, but very, very different from YA. And I'm still learning that process.
It seems like such a fine line, like
it is,
tonally, and
yeah. And I think now there's more of a gradient too. Like, there is this kind of middle ground now where there are, adult stories that are, but still with people who are figuring out adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are so many qualities about YA that I love and wish more quote unquote like adult novels had, like that distillation that you were talking about. I think that we could use more of it.
I agree. I think that's young adult's greatest strength, is its ability to tap into like the core emotions of something. And I just feel so much more intimate with characters in YA because of that, and I would like to see more of that in adult too. Yeah,
there's a clarity and a sort of concise quality. Okay, very general question, but I would love to know, what tips do you have for writers who are at the beginnings of their careers, or people who are looking to try writing more?
Honestly, the biggest piece of advice that I wish I had when I was an aspiring writer is to not worry about writing a bad first draft. I don't remember who it was that said it to me, but they were like, with your first draft, it's quantity over quality. Like, it does not matter if it's good. I have yet to know a writer who can write a great first draft. Like, nobody does that. Even, the greatest authors don't, well, maybe like one or two of them do, but like most people don't. And we don't talk about those people. But I had this problem when I was an aspiring writer where I would write like 3 chapters, and then I didn't think it was coming out the way it was in my head, which was perfect. And then I would try to edit it, and then it wouldn't come out right. And then some other idea would distract me, and I would abandon the first one and write 3 chapters of the next one. And I would just keep doing this, and I would never finish anything. And then eventually, over time, I realized like you just have to finish something. You just have it's okay if it's bad. So I've had to force myself to not look back and just go. And it could be the worst draft in the world, but you can't work with something that you don't have. So
Yeah.
Finish it first.
Yeah.
You can go back and change anything. And I think that is comforting to know when you're first starting out and you're just like, is this story ever going to be finished? And like, it doesn't matter if the chapter's bad, just throw it in there, get the word count in, and then you can go back and rip it to pieces, you know? So,
oh, that's so empowering. Actually.
I still have to tell myself that.
I'm gonna, that's hard.
It never gets any easier.
Oh my God. I would love to do a quick sort of fun rapid fire with you.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Okay, so what I wonder if we should give context for this. In this world, sand. Maybe you can explain it better. Maybe you can explain it better.
So sand is the philosopher's stone distilled into a drug. So in alchemy, the philosopher's stone is like the holy grail. This is like a substance that is the holy grail for the pursuit of perfection. It can change you into the most perfect version of yourself. And in this world, sand is like the modern day drug version of that. If you take this silvery powder, it transforms you into the most perfect version of yourself. Like everything about you gets enhanced. You know, what you're good at gets enhanced. What you're bad at also gets enhanced and has all kinds of ramifications in the story.
So many ramifications. I would love to know, what do you think sand would elevate in you?
Let me think.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, it's fine. Well, I was like, so I am the opposite of Sam in this way. Sam has a photographic memory. I have a terrible memory. Like, it is really bad, really bad. And so I think if I took sand, I would not remember anything. I would be like 51st dates. I would just be like completely lost. I think that I hope I would be a better writer though. Although I don't think I would remember anything that I'm writing. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't think I should take sand, basically.
I don't think I should take sand either. But that sounds like you would be in a very transcendent realm.
Yeah.
Not perhaps.
I think I would be really confused all the time.
Okay, second, what kind of alchemist do you think you would be, or would you want to be?
So in Red City, there are several different branches of alchemy. So there's bioalchemists who they manipulate the chemicals in your body, and there's alchiatrists who can heal you, and elementalists who do elements, and polymists who are like doing war, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. But I think philosophers. Thank you. They're the ones who make sand. I guess alchiatry would be pretty handy to have, because that is the alchemy that heals people with limitations. But, you know, I feel like I'm a pretty clumsy person. I feel like it would be nice to be able to, like, if I skinned my knees, I could just like kind of wave over it and be like, unskinned.
And then
although
forget
that's
about
actually,
it.
It's more complicated than that. But yeah, and then forget about it. You know, or like if we're hiking and I broke a finger or whatever, or a friend broke a finger, I'm like, let me get that for you.
Oh, that would be so
like,
nice.
like that person on the plane. You know, they're like, is there a doctor? And I'm like, I'm kind of a doctor.
I think.
Sort of. There may be some consequences, but you'll make it.
You'll get through it somehow.
You'll get through.
What are your favorite beverages to have while you're writing?
Oh, beverages. Well, I have my tea mug right here, so I guess I'll go with tea. I am a tea person. I am slowly becoming a coffee person, but I had always liked to have a little cup of tea nearby.
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you a physical pen and paper writer, or do you prefer typing?
A little bit of both, honestly. I usually am on the computer typing. During the pandemic, though, when I was really struggling with creativity, I realized that I preferred writing by hand. So I do switch every now and then when I feel the need.
What were your favorite video games growing up and currently?
Oh, my first ever video game was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I played that into the ground. Like, I had a Sega Genesis and got it confiscated multiple times by my parents because I was just like stuck in my room playing that game. I love the entire Sonic series. Otherwise, Assassin's Creed. I am a huge Assassin's Creed girly. I love the whole Brotherhood series, and Origin was the latest one that I managed to blow all the way through. I love that series. We could talk. This could be a whole other podcast episode.
I know. I
video games, just like asking, like, what's your favorite book? Yeah.
What is your favorite like video game soundtrack or music from video games? Because I've just gotten really into like Hollow Knight and Undertale.
Oh, I haven't heard either one of those. I'm going to
Oh,
look those up right after this.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Beautiful music. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will look that up. There was a game called Bastion that came out a while back, and it has this kind of like Western rock soundtrack,
Ooh.
and it's so good. I love that soundtrack. Now I'm like going on my playlist to find them. There's one that's slipping my mind. Oh, but there's this one indie game called Journey that came out several years back, and it has a beautiful soundtrack. Like, it will move you to tears if you listen to it. The game itself is super short. Yeah, and I recommend the game too. Okay. There's not a single spoken word in the game. You're playing as this little character who is lost in this like kind of mystical desert world and trying to figure out where he is. And it's just beautiful. It's like 2 hours long, super short game. Beautiful music paired with it. I was like sobbing my eyes out by the end of this game. It's so good.
That sounds wonderful, actually.
I highly recommend it. Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
Reading. So I had it on my table. Where is it? Anyway, I'm reading the oh wait, okay. It's on I'm using it to prop up my laptop. So
You're
I'm
propped
gonna get
on
slightly
some books
shorter.
Too.
I am. I know. I've got like a little stack. So I'm reading The Maiden and Her Monster by Maddie Martinez. Yeah, yes. It's so great. I can't believe this is her debut. It's a debut fantasy. It is gorgeous and very atmospheric. It's sapphic. It's just beautiful. Like, I highly recommend this book.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and then I'm also reading The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst, because Sarah is a wonderful, wonderful, sweet human, and her books are also wonderful and sweet. And it's just alone. Like it's so cozy. It's wonderful.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's perfect. Because yesterday someone was asking for cozy books, so I can give that as a recommendation.
It's great.
Okay, 2 more questions. What were well, this is a big one, but like your favorite books from childhood or your most impactful books?
My childhood books. Well, the Redwall series for sure. I cannot exaggerate my obsession with that series. Like, I wrote so much fan fiction as a kid for that series. I loved, honestly, any books that had to do with animals. I think I was really into that. I love The Rats of Nim. Like, that was another huge favorite. Yeah, I love that series. Misty of Chincoteague was another favorite. So a running theme is starting to show up here. And then a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. I loved, Tolkien, of course. I love David Eddings. He was another like kind of classic fantasy writer that I haven't gone back and reread recently, but I remember just absolutely loving those stories. They were funny, which was new to me in fantasy. They were kind of like lighthearted and adventures. Wheel of Time. I love Jacqueline Carey. I think she's such a lyrical, beautiful writer.
Oh, she's such a gem. Yeah.
She is. She really is. How about you? What are some of your favorite childhood books?
I also loved animal-related things. I loved The Tale of Despero.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I was obsessed with Harriet the Spy.
I love Harriet the Spy. She was so great.
She's so great. I think that's what got me really into like being nosy and wondering what everyone else was doing all the time. Nice. Yeah, and then Earthsea. Absolutely. I want to revisit some of those. Okay, very last question. What are you hopeful about right now, or what makes you hopeful?
Oh, that's such a good question to end on, because we all need it.
We need it.
I think, and this is part of the reason that I always will love YA with all my heart. I think young people always make me hopeful. Like right now, I'm looking at my son, of course, and he's 6. He's very little, but he has a very, very sweet heart. Like don't get me wrong, he's sassy when he needs to be, but he and his friends are just such good kids. Like they just are so nice to each other. And I think that this generation of young people are growing up much, much more aware of their world and what's happening to it and how society is structured. I think they have a better understanding of marginalization and how to treat each other. And it's not to say that they won't have their own challenges, but I feel hopeful that, sometimes I look back at like the 90s or 80s, which were great in many ways, but there were a lot of things back then that would not fly today. And I think it's a really good thing that those things don't fly today. Like if I go back and watch a movie from the 80s or 90s, I can sit there and be like, oh, wow, I can't believe we were okay with that, you know? Yeah. And I think for us to have that instinct just means that we must have grown as a society, even though it doesn't feel like it on some days, many days these days. But
yeah.
But I do think that progress is slow but happening, and we have to make sure that it keeps happening. And I feel hopeful when I see, you know, this generation, and I hope that they I know they've been handed a really difficult time, but I am hopeful that they know what they're going to do about it, and they seem like they have good heads on their shoulders. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so, so much, Marie, for talking to me today. This has been a true pleasure.
Thank you. For you, it was so much. This was such a nice conversation.
Oh,
thank you for all of your wonderful questions. I had a blast.
Gosh. Me too. Thank you for writing this wonderful book. Red City is going to be out on October 14th for everyone listening. And I highly recommend, as well as any of Marie's previous work. Everyone should read everything. Like it, truly a no skip.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SKYLIT Books podcast series. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out the book featured in this episode, or others, please visit skylitbooks.com. If you're in the Los Angeles area, stop by for one of our live in-person author events. You can find a calendar on our website. If you like this podcast, leave us a review. It really helps us out. Our music is by Duck the Piano Wire. Till next time.